Good Saturday afternoon, YouTube. This is Tire Metalhead Weatherman. Keeping my word from the weekend forecast last night, we're going to be taking a look into the long range now, and some things have definitely changed. Business is picking back up. It's been a relatively quiet weekend, although there is a marginal risk now for severe weather around the valley of the Sierra Nevada region. Not super surprising. We'll go over that really quickly. It's not of huge concern, but a tornado threat does exist with this as well as, and that's really all there is to it. It's most likely going to be due to the oncoming flow onto the mountains and then that wave pattern allowing for just a tiny little bit of wind shear. Most of these storms aren't going to be super impressive. The parameters around here are not crazy, but yeah, brief tornado isn't out of the question here. But that's not going to be the main topic of our video. Main topic of our video is going to be an upcoming storm system that I've been talking about for a little while, that I've been kind of on the fence with a little bit as the models have been changing with this, but confidence has now begun to increase once again, and now we have a day 5 slight risk. And if you want to guess which area it is, it shouldn't be hard to figure out after I do this. This seems all too familiar. South central Mississippi, central Louisiana, East Texas, once again in the line of fire for severe weather. These guys have been getting caught up in almost all of the events, pretty much from December, from maybe mid-November onward. Last one kind of spared them, which is good news, but we still have to watch out. But we still were like side-eyeing them just a little bit just to make sure. But you guys are back in the line of fire again. If there's any good news to be had, is you guys have gotten a little bit more experience with this. So hopefully, if things really do go downhill here, we have the experience and knowledge to take shelter when it is necessary. So we're going to go ahead and highlight the details of this threat. We're not going to read the synopsis at this time because it's more or less hearsay at this point, but let's also take a preview at days 6 through 8, and they're all predictability too low. So we're going to have to watch that as well. So onward we go into the Vorticity models. It's a very reliable model. In fact, this is what helped me kind of start to map out what was going on with that last system, which ultimately led to the significant tornado threat we got. In fact, very unfortunate news in Alabama, and also some very intense tornadoes occurred in Alabama. I think Selma might be rated EF3, maybe even EF4. And then some of that even worked its way into Georgia here, where towards LaGrange, which is a very common tornado corridor over towards True County, that might be EF3, EF4 rating. Griffin, Georgia, got caught up in that as well. And we'll have to see what ends up happening with the reports in South Carolina and North Carolina as well. But that storm system is now out of here, offshore at this point. We're dealing with a little bit of cold air today, and we're going to be back on a warm-up path as time goes on. In fact, you can even see it here. This is one thing that has not changed with any of the models here, was the fact that once this system went through, there was going to be a really impressive ridge that would come in and really create a warm sector that would be more than suitable for setting the stage for the next event being much bigger. So, that being said, we look onward towards the 15th. That warm sector is starting to become really abundant across both the southeast and the southern plains. Temperatures easily looking like they're going to be getting into the mid-60s and 70s at this point. Could even see a few 80s a little further to the south. And this next storm system at first doesn't really look impressive. Not a whole lot of cold air behind it. We may have to watch for snow and ice around this region here, especially towards the central plains, maybe the northern tiers of the Midwest, heading towards the Great Lakes. The backside of this, there could be some showers and thunderstorms, but nothing magnanimous of any kind. But again, that warm sector holds out and ultimately will set the stage for this next system that comes in here around the 17th. So this is the early morning of the 17th. Not a lot of cold air behind this at first, but it does start to pick up over time. And as the system moves onward, we have to watch towards this region here, and this kind of has a very identical, but maybe even a little bit better look on the subtle forcing here. Like, it's still strong forcing, but it could very well be a little bit more on the subtle side to where we could get maybe discrete supercells to form towards southern Louisiana. I also think that there is a potential for a threat over towards Arkansas as well, so I do expect that slight risk to maybe expand possibly, depending on how the dynamics trend onward from here. So this is looking towards the 18th on the afternoon. Storms will probably start to pop off around East Texas, and then they will continue to develop as we go into Mississippi. Then the potential will extend into the 19th across the southeast, maybe creating another big-time storm event. It has a similar look to the last storm that came through once we get to this point, so there could be embedded line segments with supercells. This will be well out ahead of the actual low pressure, but the forcing will be a little bit more subtle because here's the center of our low pressure here, and then over here is our warm sector. Of course, we do have to watch ahead of that cold sector, this cold core right here, where there could also be potential for severe weather. It'll be hard to say what's going on with that, but flooding is becoming a little bit more of a concern to me there. So as we continue to move this forward, it becomes really robust, and there's going to be a wintry side with this. And then also there's another system that's north of the border. I'm slightly suspicious of these two maybe phasing and creating a much bigger storm on this front, because this storm does look pretty big, pretty intense. So we'll have to keep an eye on that as well, because that's going to be a key to a lot of the dynamics we will see soon. And then as we roll this forward, the storm system rolls out through the Great Lakes once again. We could have to watch the northeast for snow, and then there's another system that will be right behind that. This one will have a boatload of cold air behind it. This is 150 hours out, so we're going to start to get into that no man's land territory. And pretty much it'll be a similar deal, maybe a little bit more intense of a storm too, or at least according to the Euro. And this will work its way through the eastern half of the country by the latter half of the month. Then there's more cold air funneling down after that. West will start to warm up, and maybe this could be a sign of the end of the atmospheric river train that we've been dealing with, hopefully. This kind of looks like there might be an end in sight here for you guys. So it's good to see that we may finally have some good news here for the west, but also this could mean a lot of problems towards the east. What this could bring to the eastern half of the country, I'm not sure, but it looks like there's a lot of energy with this setup here as we look towards the 24th. So I'm going to keep that date marked, and we'll be watching that through the next week or so and getting a better idea of what's going on with that. Let's make our comparison with the Canadian model. This is actually the first time I've seen the Canadian model today, whereas the GFS and the Euro I'm able to look at a little bit quicker. So it's going to be pretty much a similar deal through the first bit of this run here. And here's a system coming in on the 17th in the morning hours of the 18th. And it's a little bit, the storm system's a little bit closer inward, but the forcing is about the same. There's a little bit more warm energy around this. Still an impressive cold core setup. And we still have to watch towards the Ohio Valley for some showers and thunderstorms, maybe some severe. And then also plenty of forcing, or plenty of ample forcing around the southeast too to watch after. So this storm system rolls through, doesn't really drop the temperatures too much, so it kind of sets the stage for this next system to be a little bit more intense. Because look how much cold air starts to dig in with this, and look how far south this digs. And then as this starts to spin and become a cutoff low, this could create multiple sectors where there could be severe weather. Some include tornadoes, but unfortunately from what I can see here, this looks like it's in a very familiar area. Good grief. And then, of course, we'll have to watch towards the Tennessee and Ohio valleys as this would move on further to the north here. This looks like it's going to have a lot of energy around it. Probably is going to be a bomb cyclone in its own right. And then as this goes off to the north and east, this could be a big wintry event. And then, of course, we have to watch the system behind that. In fact, the Canadian kind of shows these two maybe phasing a bit, which is really interesting, and that could lead to maybe a wintry event over towards New Mexico and Texas, possibly, if there's enough cold air funneling in behind it. There's a lot of ripples in this in these isobars here, which is usually indicative of either a massive surge of warm or cold air, and we're close to that 540 number right here. The 540 number's up here, but we're at 546, 549 around this region, which is not common. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. I have a hunch that we could be seeing something here. So that's the end of the model run with that, and then the GFS is the heavy hitter here. It's the longest run we have, and this will probably take us into the rest of the month. But we roll this forward here, and we'll see a similar situation. So here's a look at the GFS, and we're going to basically end up seeing a lot of the same thing leading up to the 19th. Here comes our storm system. Looks like it's a little bit stronger with the GFS. This isn't uncommon with this model. In fact, there's actually a pretty stout 540 line that pops up around the center of the low pressure region. And there's also a lead to a threat maybe a little bit further to the north too, which is kind of interesting. So there is a little bit of model discrepancy here. There's some really strong storm activity that could be setting up around south central Arkansas as well with this. So we draw this forward. This looks like a line of storms, but it also has that look like we could deal with a little bit of a similar situation to what happened this week as time goes on. And then this, of course, will turn into a very big system with probably lake effect snow and maybe big time snow towards the northeast. Then the storm system after that, similar deal, but a far larger rain shield too. Also a lot more scattered showers and storms, so this could lead to a flooding threat around the southeast, maybe even some severe as well. All this is going to depend on the positioning of this low pressure. Do I think it'll go this far south? I kind of doubt it, but I'm not entirely certain on it. Not high confidence on that yet. But one thing is for certain, there is quite a streak of energy that pops up here. This big cool down that comes in with it. So this could set the stage for potentially some kind of winter event pushing a little further to the south. Then we have these next two pieces of energy here, about 207 hours out, that we have to watch. This could lead to a snow event that's a little bit further east of the Rockies as well, and towards the desert southwest. But one thing that I'm seeing in conjunction with all three models is the fact that there could be a massive cool down on the way. So sometime I'd say between the 23rd and the 25th, you might want to start gearing up for a cool down. This is still pretty far out. This is only like the beginning stages of what this storm system could look like. But if this were to hold, there could be some problems on the way here. And this is also problematic look in its own right, because there's a big storm system right here. There's subtle forcing here. Could be a severe weather situation where we could get another big outbreak possibly. And this is towards the 25th, so we have to watch that real close. So the only model that will be going out this far at this point is the GFS. And this is a very strong looking system. So we have to just keep watching this closely until we get in the range of the other models, and then we can start honing this down a bit. So then this storm system moves off to the north, turns into a big snow event towards the northeast yet again, and then we can see a very ominous looking setup towards the end of the month here. Look at this piece of energy here. Good grief. I don't know if this makes its way down to the US, but if it does, that could be a very big problem. And it looks like it gets mighty close. That looks like that's coming almost from the polar regions. If that is coming that way, oh boy, this could make for a very volatile situation if that comes to be the case. Wow, there is a lot of energy out ahead of these two systems here. This itself is just causing a huge trough in the jet stream. Like, this storm is enormous. And look at all the energy that's out ahead of this trough here. That could lead to multiple days of severe weather, strong tornadoes even possible. Hard to say where exactly, but this is insane. But anyway, this storm moves out, and that's pretty much the end of the model run. So that's the end of vorticity runs. Let's go ahead and take a closer look at some of the dynamics here. I'm not trying to get too far out into that. We're going to kind of lean more towards just maybe the flash rate on the euro. I haven't shown that in a while. So here we are taking a look at the flash density. This is a while. It's been a while since I've looked at this with the euro. There's usually been pretty high confidence with this. And really there is with this one, but I wanted to show you guys something a little different from what we've been seeing. Kind of change it up a bit. But the results are going to be pretty much the same for the areas that we're going to be concerned with severe weather in particular. This is basically the flash density is showing areas that are most apt to seeing lightning. And of course, towards the 18th, where we're looking at our slight risk right now, we can see that right around north and central Louisiana seems to be where we have the highest flash density. And then as this goes forward, we have to start looking towards the southeast. I do think that we will see an increase in the flash density as we go into the 19th and maybe towards the 20th as time goes on. And then the next system, of course, a lot of activity towards the Gulf. I do think that will extend a little further to the north as well. So as we move this forward, we're just going to continue to see a couple of big events up to the end of the model run, or after the end of this model run here. It's the only model that shows this, so it's kind of crummy. But one other thing we can also look at is the upper level temperatures as well. So pretty much it's self-explanatory here, where these little bluish and purple bowling balls, I should say, are going to be where our low pressure centers are. Anywhere that's in the red is dealing with warm air, dealing with a ridge, and our high pressure is going to be these red bowling balls right here. No sexual innuendos, please. Get your mind out the gutter. But we can see that our next couple of big systems still end up rolling through the west here. So the river's continuing at the moment. Then here comes our next big system. It kind of has that look of a trough ejection too. So you can see that little weaker trough that was developing here just getting kicked out. This comes in, becomes a very big storm, and then right behind it there's another one, and that kicks that off. And then this becomes a pretty big storm in its own right. And another one comes in right behind it. And these two almost try to phase a little bit. This one kicks this out. And then, geez, it's just a lot to keep up with here. But then these two start to phase. This becomes a bigger storm. And then here's that megalodon monster-esque type of storm. And this is where I'm concerned about maybe a changeover to a little bit something more of a winter system. Maybe seeing some cold air and snow in places that are not used to seeing it. How far south does this push? I'm not sure. For right now, it looks like at least the Ohio Valley, pushing towards the Tennessee Valley. Then after that, we have another low towards the end of this model run that we'll have to watch as well. And normally when I look at this map this far out, it looks a little messy. Not so much this time. That means there's a decent bit of confidence with this as well. So these last couple weeks of January are going to be very interesting. Here's a look at the temperatures ahead on all three of the models, really. They're in pretty good agreement for the most part. Some are going to be a little bit more aggressive with this warm sector that starts to develop as we head towards the 19th, especially as we get towards the southern part of the U.S. here. Oh shoot! I was thinking it would pause with. I was thinking it would pause somehow with the space bar, but it didn't. But if we head fast forward to the 20th, then I cannot speak. 18th, then that's when we start to see a really impressive warm sector develop. Right about, oops, I went backwards. Cannot get my stuff right now. So it's about 21Z, I would say. and we can see temperatures into the 70s around eastern Texas, and reaching the mid 70s around Louisiana and Mississippi. Arkansas were a little bit cooler than I was expecting, but not by much. And then of course we can see this warm sector in heading into the southern parts of the Appalachians here. So the Carolinas, Georgia, we're gonna have to watch you in the following day as these storm systems will roll as this storm system rolls through. So Atlanta on the day of the 18th or 19th, excuse me, we're going to be into the upper 60s, maybe the 70s, which is a little bit alarming with the system coming in. So that means we could have some extra fuel available. We'll get into the dew points in a later video. But the fact that we're seeing that is not a good sign so far. So we watch these next few systems roll through. They're a bit colder, so those surface temperatures are going to be something to watch over the latter half of the next 10 days, I would say. Especially towards the morning hours, we could be dealing with a lot of sub-freezing temperatures. You can kind of see this little finger of cold air starting to work its way in from the northeast here. Just kind of hanging on, and you can see the big-time cold starting to come in behind that, where we're dealing with temperatures in the 20s, teens, and even some below zeros. Don't worry, it does, as of right now, it does not look like the Christmas setup here that we had dealt with earlier. But it's still going to be a little bit colder than what you were expecting. So definitely make sure you're bundling up and probably loading up on firewood. That would be my best advice. We look at the GFS. This is going to look interesting for sure. And here's our warm sector beginning to develop here. It's towards the 16th. And then as we go into the 18th, look at how it really just starts to expand out, where it almost has the look of an eagle. In fact, here, if you look at it from this angle right here. But mid 70s, upper 60s, we know the story there. This system seems to run a little bit further out of steam as we get towards the 19th. Oh, I actually was looking a day ahead of the 18th here, excuse me. But this is towards the afternoon of the 18th. Really abundant warm sector. And the warm nose actually pushes its way into the Tennessee Valley, even parts of Kentucky, so we'll have to watch you guys too. And then as we get into Thursday, we'll have to watch northern and north central Georgia towards the big cities, and even towards southern Georgia here. We're starting to flirt with 80 here, so that's a little bit alarming depending on how this storm system ends up moving. Could be some significant weather down here once again. Then we'll watch this cold air start to nose its way back in, and you can see how this cold air is starting to rush in. Like, you're starting to see these temperatures coming in from much further north. And once we get towards the latter half of this model run, I'm starting to see some signs I do not like, because at this point we're well past the Euro Canadian capabilities here. But we can also see that we're getting into those negative 20s again up north, negative 30s even. And this is going east of the Rockies as well. Actually, over here it looks like we're starting to warm up. But as this atmospheric river ends, could be a very big cold front that comes in, and we'll have to watch this area as well, because some of these areas, I mean, they're not going to be like super duper cold, but any storm system that comes in with this could turn into a big time snowstorm, and we can't rule that out. So, especially over towards the south, I got my eye on you for this one. And Canadian really doesn't look any different from these two. Ooh, wow, Sunday morning actually looks like it's going to be really cold, by the way. So over towards the south, just make sure you're ready for that, because we could be dealing with some lows in the mid to lower 20s in places that aren't used to seeing them. This even pushes into Florida a bit, which is kind of crazy. So we head into Monday, and we'll quickly be warming up. And then, of course, same deal, warm sector kicks in, abundant mid to upper 60s, low 70s, and maybe even upper 70s for some. Then we start to see that cold air start to take back over and dominate. We're going to get a little dose of winter again. over towards the southeast. The rest of the country is already starting to feel this cold air setting in, and this is going to set the stage for multiple snowstorms as time goes on. Last but not least, of course, let's go ahead and take a look at what the precip looks like. And this will get really interesting, especially towards the GFS, but we'll start out with the Euro. And we start out with this first system here. Mostly rain on this part. It's a stout system, actually. It's not a weak one, but we just don't seem to have that cold air funneling in on the front side of it. Towards the back side, as it moves further to the north, there may be some light to moderate snowfall with this, but this isn't going to really deepen and amount to much of anything. It's this system behind it that really starts to kick in and become a big deal. Produces severe weather in the warm sector around Louisiana, Mississippi. I'm still not ruling out parts of Arkansas, but over towards Kansas and Nebraska, parts of eastern Colorado, Denver included, we're watching you for snow. And as we roll this forward, this becomes a much bigger event. While it's a 1,000 millibar low, we have to watch towards the northern tier of the Mississippi River Valley, Missouri River as well, and towards the Great Lakes, as this becomes a much bigger problem for you guys. The Great Lakes lake effect machine will come into effect here, and this will allow for a lot more snow towards areas that have been seeing a lot of it this winter. Then also towards the Adirondacks, we're going to get some pretty good action here. Further towards the interior, you're going to have much lesser snowfall totals. Then here's our next big storm system. It looks like an absolute mess of crap vection, but there could still be some severe weather with this, so we cannot let our guard down with that one. And then, of course, on the back side of this, as there's more abundant cold air, there's a higher chance of snow. And I really feel like this is setting the stage for maybe a southern snow event. I just can't shake that feeling from what I'm seeing from these models. Here's our next run. Here's our next system coming in at the end of this run. And we have to watch this really closely because look where that 540 line is. And that there still looks like there's some Gulf of Mexico moisture flow. So there could be some big snowfall totals over and towards this region around the Ozarks. Maybe even the western parts of the Tennessee Valley. That's what we're seeing with the Euro. I'm going to actually move the Canadian over to this time and go ahead and look at that. But it's going to be a pretty similar look. Warm core setup on that one. This isn't going to really amount to much snow, although there is a little interesting pocket here where we could see some sleet and some ice over towards the northern tiers of Michigan. Not the UP quite as much. It's still going to be snow for you guys, but we'll have to watch that for some brief sleet and ice potential there. Then here's our next big system. Here's where our severe weather comes into play. Has that linear look, but there could be some stuff out ahead of this. Canadian's a little bit more of a lower res model compared to the GFS and the Euro, but this becomes a much bigger system. It's a little bit colder with the Canadian as well. We also have to watch for ice storm potential too, just off the Great Lakes before this ends up being dominated by cold air and turning into all snow for some. And then I also see, that's interesting. Canadian does this a lot, but this is the 540 line, which is our 32-degree line. We're still seeing rain right here. I'm wondering what's going on there. It could be up towards the higher levels of the atmosphere. It could be still warm. Question mark. But for the most part, I think that's actually going to end up being snow, and we'll watch this kick itself out of the northeast. Next system comes in. Snow towards the panhandle of Texas and New Mexico here, and then we watch this big shield of rain begin to develop, and a lot more midwestern snow on the backside of this. And this, like I said, I cannot shake the feeling that there could be a big snow event for the South. So don't panic yet. Can't confirm it. More than 10 days out, so this could turn over on its head in an instant. But from what I can tell here, stage is being set for something. Last but not least, the GFS, and oh boy, this is probably going to look crazy because the GFS can make some crazy model runs happen here. So here's our first storm system around the 16th, 17th time frame. It's worked its way off to the north. And then we see the next big storm system come in around the 18th. Here's our severe weather potential. This mainly looks linear right now. I do think that there could be a couple embedded cells in there. And then we'll watch the Midwest become inundated with a little bit of snow here. Then the next system comes in behind that. Stays a little bit quiet until we get to the 21st, before we see this moisture shield come in from the Gulf here. This is also what's going to feed this snow system right here. Doesn't really look like it deepens so far, but look what happens on the backside of that. Right over towards the western half of the Tennessee Valley here into Kentucky. You could start out with potentially some strong showers and storms. Ooh, and there's this little area right here where we're seeing a little bit of a weird hook shape right here. It's interesting, but I don't think that's going to amount to anything as of right now. Hopefully those aren't famous last words, but towards the Tennessee and Ohio valleys, we'll have to watch that system for intense snowfall possibly. And then our next system after that, we'll have to watch for severe weather. Wow, look at that. That's pretty decent definition for the GFS. Looks like a linear type storm, maybe some embedded supercells in there. And this ends up moving to the east or north and east, and then it becomes a big snow system. Then our cool down should be coming in pretty soon from this. It looks like we're hitting that around the 28th. It's right around the very end of the month, towards the far reaches of this model run here. Starts out as rain over here. Big time snow shield develops over towards the Ohio Valley and into the northeast, especially towards the northern mountain ranges. And then out we go. And that's the end of the model run here. But look at the cold air that's staged up here. If this moves around the wrong way, I'm telling you, something could be up for the southeast. But that's all I got for you guys on this one. I know it was a long one. I'll try and timestamp this one before I release it, so that way you guys have that way you guys can skip to whichever parts are most applicable to you. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, drop me a like, of course. Share this video to people that may need it. Don't panic yet, because a lot of the stuff that we're looking at is pretty far out, at least 10 days in advance, if not longer. Other than the event on the 18th, maybe pay a little bit closer attention to that. But this is the end of the video here. I hope you guys enjoyed. This has been Metalhead Weatherman. I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.